today we are making our homemade ravioli. So we prepped up our dough earlier and it's been sitting, the flour's been hydrating. You guys, you can see it is so much softer now, ready to be rolled out. I've got my coconut cake with the crumb coat on and a coconut frosting. We'll talk more about that frosting when we put our second coat on and our coconut shreds on there. Let's start by getting the base for our ravioli making. So we're gonna do a kind of a ground beef and Italian sausage base with ricotta, mozzarella, and Parmesan cheese in it. So like 3 cheese and 2 meat, deliciousness. So we're gonna get that going. And then we'll make some meatballs as well and have those popped up in the oven. And then we'll bake up our focaccia that we prepped up earlier as well. And we'll make a salad. So we've got quite the evening. It's not afternoon anymore planned. So let's start by getting our meat, 1 pound of ground beef and 1 pound of Italian sausage, kind of cooking up because we're going to be using that in our filling. If I can figure out how to open this. You know, they always say like you can just slice it open, but you can't. It's like those easy peel on the bacon. It never is an easy peel. And we've got to get our bacon cooking up for our salad because we're kind of doing a copycat Maggiano salad for our dinner as well. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse. We're going to break this up, let it saute. So you want to cook your meat for the base of our ravioli because it kind of helps that cheese like heat up and cook up faster, because when we go to boil our ravioli, it doesn't take very long to get them nice and tender, and so you don't want to have to keep boiling them to cook the meat all the way through. So you want to make sure your meat is pre-cooked when you're putting the filling in. Now we're not going to use all of this in our filling, but we'll use a good portion of it, and then the rest will just kind of go in the sauce. So we're going to mix it up, and we're going to season it so it's also well seasoned too. But I want to break it up into kind of smaller chunks. And I like the mixture of Italian sausage and ground beef because I feel like it's not too strong of a flavor. I think it works really, really well. So we're going to add in some Italian seasoning here. If I can open it. There we go. When in doubt, use your teeth. I got Italian seasoning on my tongue. Delicious. We're going to sprinkle in about, I don't know, like 2 teaspoons. And a little black pepper, about a half a teaspoon. And a little garlic salt, because while the Italian sausage has good seasoning to it, the ground beef is bland. So we want to make sure we season it up. About a teaspoon of garlic salt. We'll let this cook up. And then we can slice up our bacon and get our bacon cooking for our salad. So we'll have this nice bacon bits in it now. I believe Maggiano actually uses like crispy pancetta, but bacon's essentially the same thing. So we're going to cut it here. I'm going to use a whole pound because I have a feeling the cameraman is going to be snacking on some bacon. And so if I used any less, we wouldn't have enough in our salad. You know, he needs his little appetizer to his ravioli. He told me that he wanted to eat 37 ravioli tonight and changed it to 39. And I just sit there and I'm like, well, I don't make that small of ravioli. I'm like the bigger the better here. I'm gonna slice this up into bits. That way it's gonna cook up a little bit faster in our back little burner here. And once we have our filling made for our ravioli, then we can start rolling out the noodles. You just don't want the noodles to dry out before you can seal them up, because then they can crack and it doesn't kind of hold together as nicely. Now you could always use pancetta and just slice it up and crisp it, The bacon works well. Here we go. And then we're going to, for our salad, this is essentially, I'm making the copycat like house salad for them, which has red onions, tomatoes, gorgonzola cheese. I'm going to use bacon, and then I'm going to make like a homemade kind of dressing. It's kind of like an Italian. I'm actually going to do like a creamy Italian balsamic vinaigrette. So just a slightly different, but it will be lovely for it. And I'll just go well with tonight's dinner. Oh, that's a big piece. Let's cut this down. Here we go. We'll give my hands a quick wash. Okay. And then we'll get that back burner going with our bacon. And while we're waiting for that, we're going to make the panade. We're going to make our Italian meatballs to bake up, because while you might think, oh, you have meat in your ravioli, this is for my stepdad, and he loves meat. He loves meatballs, and he loves ravioli. So he gets meatballs with his ravioli. And because, you know, if it's your birthday, you could have your meal the way you want it, within reason. Okay. I'm going to just slide this up here. While that's cooking, we're going to make our panade for our meatballs. And we're just going to make 2 pounds of meatballs. Essentially the same kind of base starting out. We're going to start off with 2 slices of soft bread. And we're going to soak them with enough cream to make them soggy. But I don't want them to be sitting in a pool of cream, because you don't want them too soggy. It's about 1 to 2 tablespoons of cream per slice of bread. Depending on, you know, your size of your bread and how dry it is. Here we go. But enough, again, to make it soggy. Now, you don't want to use a sourdough or a really crusty Italian or anything like that, because those crusts don't break down well enough, and then you'll have big chunks of crust in your meatballs. So we're going to do 2 eggs, since we're doing 2 pounds of meat. And then we're going to add in Italian seasoning, onion powder, and garlic salt. We're going to do about a half a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. About a half a tablespoon of onion powder. And then a half a tablespoon of garlic salt. There we go. And this is going to be the base to our meatballs. We're going to get in there and we're going to mix it with our hands to make the base of our panade. So just kind of squeezing it through. Really working the bread through your fingers until it's like forming a nice paste, breaking up those little crusts. And this is going to be the binder for your meatballs. And they're going to make the best meatballs, because using a bread soaked in cream gives you a really tender meatball. It gives you the starch to hold it together, but it doesn't dry it out or make your meatball spongy. It really is a really, I guess I want to say it's just a better way to do it. I feel like, you know, growing up, I always was taught breadcrumbs, breadcrumbs, breadcrumbs. And then I always wondered why, like, my mom's Swedish meatballs were so much better than most meatballs. And she always used a panade. There's also the addition of a potato in her panade. But then once I started doing it and using it in all of my meatballs, it just makes such a better meatball. Okay. I'm that breaking up. We got my back burner on. Yes, we'll toss that in just a second. So we have 2 eggs, 2 slices of bread. We're going to put in 2 pounds of meat. We're going to do a pound of Italian sausage. I like to do mild Italian sausage for this. And then we're going to do a pound of ground beef. Assuming I can open it. Down to my like 5th scissor of the day. Okay. And we're going to put it in here, and then we're going to squeeze all of it together to make the base for our meatballs. And then these can start baking up so we can add them into our sauce on there. And then hopefully our meat will be all mixed up and ready to go in just a second. But let's start by mixing this. One kind of rule of thumb that makes making meatballs a little bit easier is if you just set your meat out like 20 minutes before you make them from the refrigerator. That way they're not freezing cold when you have to go in here to mix them, because when it's really cold, it's kind of makes your hands really cold. So I'm just kind of doing that same, squeezing the mixture between my hands until it's all incorporated, and then we will shape up our meatballs. Do a nice little stir here. Kind of break apart. And once this is completely cooked, then we can give it a good puree in our food processor with the cheeses, and make the paste for our ravioli. And that's the base that I'm making is my kids' favorite base. It's very simple. It's just like a meat and cheese base, but they absolutely love it. Okay. I think we've got our meatball base done here. So let's get these rolled out real quick, and then I can wash and be done with the meatballs. Let's give this a nice stir. We're almost all cooked through. Just another couple minutes. And again, it's really important to make sure your meat part of your ravioli is cooked, so you don't have to do a super long boil on it, because if you boil your ravioli too long, then they'll get mushy. We'll just do a simple meatball. And then I'm going to bake these up. Right now I have my oven set to 425 because that's what we're going to bake our focaccia on. Luckily with meatballs, you can bake them at various temperatures, and they all do really well with this. So the higher you bake them just means the shorter they're in there. So we'll pop these in the oven in just a little bit to bake them up, and then they'll go into our sauce towards the end. Here. And I will say about 2 pounds of meatball, give me, I want to say like 20 to 25 or so meatballs, sometimes a little more, really just depending on the size that I make. I'm just making kind of like a golf ball, ping pong ball sized meatball here because it's just a simple one, but you can go bigger or smaller. If you go smaller, you just want to cook them for less time because you don't want to dry out your meatball by overcooking it. And bigger, on the opposite, you'll need to cook it a little bit longer. And if you do bigger meatballs, you actually want to do a slightly lower temperature, like a 350, so you don't overcook the very outside before you can get the inner side done. Sometimes I make the really big meatballs that are like the size of softballs, and they're meant to be like a meatball per person thing. But those take a good amount of time to bake up, and you want to bake them at like 350 ideally, or 325, so you don't overcook the outside. Okay, almost have these rolled up. And our meat part is for our ravioli is just about done.
Can you go over what's in the meatball?
Yes, so we made a panade using 2 slices of bread, about 1/4 cup of cream, maybe a little less, 2 eggs, about 1/2 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, 1/2 tablespoon of onion powder, and then 1/2 tablespoon of garlic salt. So just some nice, great, simple flavors in there, but will be delicious. I'll wash my hands up nicely. Okay. And then I'm going to give my bacon a little stir. We'll give our meat a little stir, and then we can pop these in the oven. We'll toss these around. We're going to cook our bacon until it's nice and crispy on there. So like bacon bits, and we'll have a good amount. because I have a feeling a third of it will be gone before it makes it to the salad. There we go. Just breaking it apart. Give this a good stir. And then we can pop these off in the oven to bake up. And since we have our oven on at 425, I'm going to say that these are going to probably take about 15 minutes or so to cook up. So we'll check them after that. And once these come out, we can put our focaccia in. So let me put my timer here. And we can get that going. And there's our cake. We've got our crumb coat on it. We'll decorate it with the second coat of frosting and then some shredded coconut, which is nice because it's a very easy coat to actually decorate. Okay. Give this a nice little toss. You know what? It's almost done, but since we have a minute, let's actually get our cake going. That way I can be done with this, because once the ravioli starts to roll in, then we're going to be on there. So we have 5 layers in here. It's a simple kind of coconut cake. Very, very mellow coconut flavor. And then we have a coconut frosting. I did a crumb coat on it. Now we're doing our second coat, which doesn't have to be beautiful because we are going to be putting shredded coconut on, but it's just another filler of the gap. Now, what makes this coconut frosting a little bit unique is I use a can of coconut cream, but I don't use the liquid part. I just use that sweet kind of cream base on top, and then about a half a teaspoon of coconut extract, because if you use all coconut extract, it has a chemical-y taste to it. But with that coconut cream and then a little bit of this like coconut smoothie base and then powdered sugar and butter, you get just the most lovely coconut flavored frosting that's not overly sweet, but it is light and fluffy and delicious and has more of a naturally coconut flavor to it, which is what you're kind of looking for. I don't want it to be too much, but it gives you even more coconut flavor in it. And we'll get this going there. Kind of got a leaning tower of coconut here, but that's okay. I did put 3 skewers in the base to hold it together because it is 5 tiers tall, which means it can somewhat slide on there. But luckily, the base to the cake is it's like my husband says, it's kind of tastes like a little bit like a pound cake, but not as dense. And it has that similar flavor to it, but with a little bit of coconut to it. The little boys earlier, because you kind of cut off the tops of each cake before you stack them. I was putting frosting in those little tops and giving it to them because they wanted to eat it. Okay. So we've got this kind of next kind of layer on it. And like I said, you don't have to be beautiful with this, because the nice part about it is you're going to be putting coconut shreds on there, sweetened coconut shreds, and sweetened coconut shreds are messy, so you don't have to have a perfect frosting layer. I'm going to turn this off since that's nice and cooked. So this is the one where don't take the time to make it perfect, because it doesn't need to be. There's times where I will work to make sure I have a very smooth frosting layer on it, and then I make sure I have a nicer crumb layer. But for this, you don't need to. Now, the only real way to get this coconut on here is to kind of put it up with your hands like this and around. You want to use sweetened coconut, because unsweetened coconut it will be really dry and doesn't have the right flavor in it. And we just kind of take our handfuls of it, bring it up in the side, and then we'll do our top at the end for it. And then we'll take a picture when we cut into it later. You guys can see the layers of it, and we'll do a little video of it. But I think I'm also going to make this a recipe card, because I make this every year because it is such a delicious, and It's not a very difficult cake to make, but it has so much great flavor. And if you are a coconut lover, this is going to be the cake for you. My stepdad is like coconut, anything is his like favorite. And so this cake is what I make every year. Sometimes I'll make homemade coconut ice cream to go with it. But we always kind of have a coconut explosion for his dessert. But you see how I said you don't need to worry about it being beautiful with the frosting. You just need to have another sticky base after that crumb coat so that you can hold this coconut layer on. And then we've got it on the top. Beautiful. And then just anywhere you see like a little mixture spot, just tap it around. And then clean up my mess here. I do a little thing that's kind of cheesy, but it's makes it to where it's even more fun and flavorful. Is we're going to put some mounds and some coconut truffles on it to kind of bring up that flavor. But I'm just going to put it in here. So, mounds, I told you, he loves his coconut. And it is, I feel like you don't see mounds very often. I put mounds around the base because they look a little bit nicer down there. And then I have white coconut truffles. They're called those like Ravioli ones, but those go up top. But you can't, I can only find them if I buy this 3-pack. I'm sure if I search some places, I know you can get like the individual ones on there. So I have them all going the right direction. There we go. But this way, when you make your slices, everybody gets like a mound slice in their cake. So you get to have it. You can also do almond joys as well. You know, the difference between almond joys and mounds is dark chocolate with the coconut filling. Almond joys is milk chocolate with the coconut filling and an almond. So they actually have different chocolates. I just wish they made a milk chocolate one with no almond, but they don't. Well, I guess there's a Bounty, but Bounty aren't very common here. You can get them in the international aisle. Okay, a few more on here. And then we'll be ready to get the rest of our ravioli because that's cooked up and cooled down just a little bit. So I've got our mound layer. And then these little coconut truffles. If I can ever figure out how to open this thing up. Ha. I know my kids are like, oh, so sad. You have to buy the whole box of these to get the coconut ones. And I'm like, but they are pretty and they match really well. Like you don't have to do the mounds if you want to keep in the like kind of the white themed, but they are a cute little white coconut truffle and we're going to put them over and around the top. And then he's got a cute little birthday cake, which is a coconut overload on here, but it is worth it. And this is like, if you like coconut, again, this is the cake for you. The base of the cake has a very mellow coconut flavor. And then you have this coconut frosting, which brings actually more of that coconut flavor in because it's a bit stronger. And then you've got the mounds on the bottom and the raffaellos on the top. Here. And that way you can get a delicious little candy bonbon in every piece. Perfect. And now we have a cake. And I can worry about this. Perfect. And we'll put a candle in there. We can't quite hold 70 plus candles in there, but we can get a big one in there. I'll put this over to the side. And let's get going on the rest of dinner here. Let me just put a little bit of the coconut over so we don't have a coconut tasting. Okay. Perfect. This is cooled down just enough. Let's give our bacon a nice little toss here. Let it crisp up. We're getting there. And you never think bacon's going to take as long as it does, but it does. Okay.
Which pots and pans do you like?
So I have all clad for my all metal ones and then hex clad for my non-stick. And I love them. I've had my all clad since I got married, so a little over almost 17 years, and they've been going strong. And then I got my hex clad a couple years ago. So I've had them a little over 2 years, and they have also been awesome. Haven't destroyed them yet or scratched them, so that is a plus. Okay, let's scoop in here. We're making the base for our ravioli. Of course, I say let's scoop in there, and I already miss it. Now, I'm not necessarily going to use all of this in here, but I'm going to fill it up about halfway with all of our little tasty little morsel bits for it on here. And then we'll add in our cheese and our 3 cheeses. I think we can get, you know what? We'll get most of it in there. The rest of the little bits will just be in the base of our sauce, so they'll make it well. We've got some ricotta. Make sure you use like a whole fat ricotta, a whole milk one, because you want it to be nice and creamy and good. We're going to add in, this is a whole, this is what, 15 ounces, so like a little over a cup. Let's see. It's like the gel or the cranberry sauce at Thanksgiving. We'll push it down. There we go. That's going to help make everything like hold together. And then we're going to do some mozzarella cheese. Again, don't skimp out on your mozzarella. Get a good thick cut mozzarella or shred it yourself. We're going to use just about a cup, so about half a bag. And then Parmesan cheese. And we're going to use about, you know, like around a half a cup or so. This adds, again, a bit more bulk or flavor to it. Once we start to puree this, this will all go down and make a lot less room. Make more room, a lot less, take up a lot less space. Yeah, it's the way my brain works here. We're going to add in a little bit of Italian seasoning because you want to season up that ricotta as well. So sprinkle it right over the top. About a teaspoon. And then about a teaspoon of garlic salt, because ricotta is kind of a bland, but creamy and delicious. So make sure you season it up. Here we go. We'll put our lid on. And we're going to bring it all the way down. I'm going to
go over what's all in there.
Yes. So right now we've got about a pound of ground beef and a pound of Italian sausage, 15 ounces of ricotta, about a cup of mozzarella cheese, and a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, a teaspoon of Italian spices, a teaspoon of garlic salt. Now, I guess we have a little bit more spices because we also spiced up our meat when we were cooking it. But we're going to puree that all. So I'm going to push it down. You see how it makes a little bit more room here? And this is going to be our meat and cheese paste filling for our ravioli. But you got to make sure your thing is all cooked up when you do it. Your meat is, because when you boil your ravioli, you won't have that much time. Okay, we've got our base here. Perfect. Now this, if you make too much or you get tired halfway through doing this, this can be frozen down and then you can unthaw it and reuse it, because I have done that before where I'm like, I can't do this. I made so many ravioli because I've gotten too ambitious, and I made like 300 raviolis at one time, and I was like, can't do anymore. Okay. Let's give that a nice stir. I'm going to turn my water pot here, get it a little bit higher so that it'll be close to boiling. Let's get our pasta dough so that we can start kind of working on this. I'll put it right over here. That way we can grab bits of it at a time. So earlier, it was, if you saw me, it was very difficult. Now you can see how soft it is now that you've just wrapped it up and you've let it hydrate. I'm going to actually break this one in two because once we roll through it, it's going to get pretty thin and pretty go there. So we'll get this going. Let me get my bacon toss in here. And we're going to start out on one through our little roller here. You see how nice, and all of this is from that, literally just all of that kneading we did. It was painstaking, but it was worth it. And then once we get this run rolled up, we're gonna go grab our meatballs out of the oven, and then we can season up our focaccia and get that in there. I'm gonna go on a 2. We'll put our 2 through. And I like to do my ravioli around either a 4 or a 5. I think I'm gonna do it at a 5 today. I'm going to do a 3 now. Now, for this dough, because we made our cake and our cake had some extra egg yolks in it, this one actually has more egg yolks in it. So it has 4 full eggs and then 4 egg yolks in it. Okay, we've got this going through. I'm skipping 4 and going straight to a 5. And then we should be able to. That looks good. Now we can grab our meatballs out. Just gonna rest this over the top of my thing. Give our bacon a little stir. And we can get this way. We got our beautiful meatballs. I'll give them a quick tap. Yep, they're firm. As long as they're firm, you'll know they're cooked through. If they have a little squish, you got to bake them a little bit longer. And for smaller meatballs, they bake up pretty quick. If you do, again, bigger ones, it does take a lot longer for it. Okay. Since our meatballs, we're going to put them right here in with our sauce. I'm just going to scrape them off in here.
Why do you stretch the ravioli dough in stages?
That's so the sheets don't dry out as I am making them. So if I were to go through and put out all of my sheets, then when I want to go and put the dough in and seal it up. Oh, the settings, because it makes them thinner and thinner. And if you try to go through the 5, it's just going to shred your dough. So you have to make your dough thinner. Now, once you get past setting 2, you can skip a setting or so to get to it, but you can't skip too many, or again, it will shred your dough and you have to start all over. Trust me, I have tried to find ways to speed up that process because that is, I think, the thing that takes the longest. But here are our Italian meatballs in here. And I'm going to start pouring our sauce on them so that they stay nice and moist on here, and we can have our sauce kind of heating up. Now, you could always make your own sauce, but I find a great thing that will save you time, and one of those things is find a store-bought sauce that you absolutely love. It took me a long time to find one that I loved, but I think just if you haven't found one, just every time you go, buy a different flavor or different brand and try it. I really love Rao's because it's not too seasoned up. It's pretty simple. So it's just like a basic marinara sauce, not sweet, and it's lovely. But it's one of those things where I think, like, growing up, you always have like the basic brands, but branch out, try some different ones until you find the one you like. Because making homemade mozzarella or marinara sauce is delicious, but it's time consuming.
And let's be honest, just tell them to try this.
It is. Rao's, I will say, I highly recommend it. It took me a while to find this, but when I found it, it was a winner. And you know me, I found it and I called it Rouse forever, and then somebody was like, it's Rayos, and I was like, that makes way more sense than Rouse. Okay, let's mix in our sauce here and just coat it up. And then once we get closer, I'll turn our sauce on, but we don't want it to get bubbling up too much. Our bacon is almost ready. It's warning the cameraman not to get too close. But once they're nice and crispy, all of them, we've got a couple bits that are still a little fatty. We'll get them out and letting to dry. Okay, before we get this one going up, I'm just going to take some, got 2 eggs here. Whoa, I guess we're cracking up. I think I'm gonna need 2 eggs for all of our ravioli. I don't wanna run out, so I'm just gonna crack them up now and whisk them up. But this is gonna be like the glue that holds my ravioli together, preferably without the eggshells. But we're gonna mix it together and just whip it up, and then you spread it on when you go to seal it, and it kind of glues it together. You don't need to mix it with any water or anything like that. Just keep it eggy. That will hold it together better. Here. That should be good. I think our bacon, it looks good. So to save the cameraman, I'll get that transitioned into a paper towel for our salad later, because a salad without bacon, can you even call it a salad? Now, the difference is, so the Maggiano's, which I'm fairly certain is a chain restaurant, they use crispy pancetta, but outside of that, it's pretty close.
You got a question? Is that a dog or a cat behind you? But Pepper's been back there too. So.
Oh yeah, so we have 3 cats and 2 dogs, and sometimes we have 3 dogs here because my mom's dog is here a lot. But so yeah, I think behind me that you may have just saw is a dog, but there was a cat behind me as well earlier. So they kind of like to make, you know, elusive one. Bruni right there, she loves to hang out by my feet in hopes for scraps. She also loves to sit on my feet while cooking, which is not the most convenient, or right behind me so that I like trip and fall. And hopefully, I think her method is she'll drop something when she falls and then I can eat it. But she's there. My other dog is, I don't know if you guys can hear him, but he is a snorer, and he is snoring. I can't see him, but I can hear him snoring from across the room. He makes an appearance too when he knows food is near. Can't remember what I had the other day, but they were so certain I was going to give it to them. They got so excited about it, and I was like, I'm not giving this to you guys. There we go. Well, let me get a trivet for this. So that is our filling for our ravioli. It's a mixture of Italian sausage, ground beef, ricotta, mozzarella cheese, and Parmesan cheese. So lots of great different flavors in there, and Italian seasoning, and and garlic salt. So we're going to use that to fill it up. I'm going to clear this area because with ravioli, I find that even when I have a large amount of space, I still don't have enough space. But I'm going to have my rolling out sheet area, and then I'm going to have my assembling sheet, because I find once I've gotten this into like a foolproof method, it works well. I told you the first time I ever made homemade ravioli, and I was like, I wanted to do it. It took me like 6 hours, and I was like, never again. But I'm much faster now. Not as great as those like 100-year-old grandmas who put us all to shame on, you know, all their little streams. And they're like, Nona, 101 making homemade ravioli. And she's got like hundreds of ravioli there. And I'm like, how? And they're perfect looking. Mine taste delicious, but they could use a little help in their appearance. I just am not the one who's going to take the time to shape everyone, get the little roller. Too much. Okay. We can get our first one out. We want well floured, that way it doesn't stick to each other. Clear off that edge just a little bit. And then let me grab a spoon. Oh, and you know what? Before we get this going, forgot we got to put our focaccia in the oven. Don't want to forget about that. I got to put some seasoning on it real quick and some oil, and then we will get that one going here. So let me put this on. We're going to drizzle with a little bit of olive oil. It already has a good coating on there. And this is our all sourdough focaccia, so it's going to be chewy and delicious. There we go. We'll make our dimples on it. Let me wash my hands real quick. And then we're just going to sprinkle with a little bit of rosemary and garlic salt. We did use rosemary in the base of it, but I want a little extra on the top because it's so good. And then garlic salt, because you need salt on your focaccia. It just makes it even tastier. We'll sprinkle it over. Okay, then we're going to bake this for about 25 minutes at 425. And so this will give a nice, with that olive oil on it, it's also underneath and all around it and in the dough, it will give it a really nice crispy edge. And again, focaccia is a little bit like a thinner one, so it doesn't get too big, but will be delicious. So I'm going to put my timer, I'm going to set it for 22 minutes and 22 seconds to give me time to get there in the process. But let's get this ravioli going. I can turn that off now. And
you have a question? Is the focaccia sourdough, and did you have to start it yesterday?
It is sourdough, and I made it earlier today. It actually comes up pretty fast as long as your starter's, fairly active. I can get my focaccia to pop up just fine the same day. You don't have to start it the day before like with bread, because it doesn't need to proof quite as long to get it there. And then I put it in my oven, which has a proofing setting, which allows it to get a little bit warmer and it heats up a little bit faster. So I'm taking a spoon here and we're adding just a little nub to the base right here. And I make sure I have a little spot between each one. That way I can kind of seal it up nicely. And I find don't go overboard with your filling on each one or it gets a little bit crazy. Take your egg wash here, or your egg, it's just egg. Brush it on. Again, you want it to be very thick so that it's like a glue. And then just take a sharp knife. Try to slice it right down the middle in between. And this is the way that I have found that I can make ravioli the quickest. And then you just pinch all the way around the edges to seal it up. And voila. Now, if you want it to be even more beautiful, you can get like a little thing and like cut up. Now, the sides ones, these look really nice because they're in the middle, but your edges always look there. If you want that crinkle cut again, you can do it. But who's going to do all of that? Now, we'll get a couple of these going because I'm going to have to boil these up in batches. So that way you guys will be here for the first round, because when I make this, I make a lot. Because if I'm going to do it, it's worth it. So we'll get through our first batch of it, but I won't make you stay for round 2 or round 3 more. But we'll see. There we go. So we're going to make a couple more of these because we've got them to boil up. We need our water going. And then we'll get our sauce starting to simmer up there with our meatballs in it. We've got our focaccia baking up. We got to make our salad here. So we still have a couple more things on there. But look, we've got our first round here. We'll go up and slide it here. Just make sure you have a well-floured surface. You can put them on baking sheets as well. So I've got my dough. I'll do my second one of this sheet. Bring it back to one. Stretch it out. And here. I always keep my dough sealed up until I'm ready to roll it out, because if you don't, it will get a little bit dry and crack on the outside. And we don't want that. The first sheet I always do twice, and then after that it's just one time through the processor.
Did you make your dough today?
I did. I made it earlier today on our lunchtime stream. So you can always go there and you can watch me make it and knead it and knead it and knead it and knead it some more. The dough is always very, very stiff when you start to work out with it, and then it gets to be softer after you've wrapped it up with plastic wrap. Just resist the urge to add more and more water to get it to come together, because it will hydrate later. And if you add too much water, your dough will be too soft during this stage that it will tear and fall apart. And I'm doing mine on a 5 setting on my my KitchenAid attachment here. Here we go. Now I find I do either 4 or 5 for ravioli. I don't like to go thinner than that, because then I find that it's too thin, and it can then fall apart. When I'm doing lasagna, I typically do around a 4 for lasagna. And then,
have you ever made homemade tortellini?
I haven't made homemade tortellini because it's a lot of the same on there, and this is about as fancy as I get with the filling and stuffing around. And now I have changed up my doughs, and I've made different types of doughs, some that have had spinach or sun-dyed tomatoes or pumpkin in it. And then I've made lots of different types of fillings. This is my family's favorite filling. So whenever I put all the work into this, I typically just make this one because this is what everybody loves. But sometimes I'll do like a brown butter, sage, and like ricotta with a butternut squash pasta on there, and it's delicious. I've done a squid ink pasta before, but it doesn't ever turn out quite as good as the restaurants ones, because I swear they know how to get more flavor in there, because it's really hard to get squid ink, and I get like stuff that's in it, and it's just hard to find. Okay, we're gonna brush this. This is again just our eggs beaten up. And then slice it down. Now you can have, there's lots of little fancy things that can give you the crinkle cuts on there and all of that stuff. Simplicity. This is what I have. I don't need another kitchen gadget for the, few times a year that I make ravioli. Now, I tried to get one of those things where it was actually an attachment, and that you could put the 2 pasta doughs and then it would like push your filling together. Never could get it to work. And it was made supposed to make perfect little like tiny raviolis. I tried so hard to get that to work. I never, ever could. So this is the way I do it. And I love this because I love the noodle part, so I get a lot of good noodle on there, but you can adjust your filling to have, more or less. Now, I will say, if you were just making this for a couple of people, this wouldn't be such a daunting task, but when you're making homemade ravioli for 9 people, this right here is probably a serving for 1 person, or at least my kids, they love it. This is the deal. They keep asking for more and more. And I'm just like, you know how much time it took me to make this? Okay. Let's get this sealed around. I make one more batch of this to go in. My water's almost to a boil. Then we'll drop and boil that off in there. So let's get another round. Now, the thing with your pasta dough, you've got to use within like 2 or so days, because if you don't, your pasta dough will actually turn like a gray color from the eggs, and the flour, so it doesn't actually hold as well. But you can use this dough, like if I have extra, I might make like chicken noodle soup or a pasta dish with it. If I like halfway through and I'm like, I'm done, if I call it quits. But we'll go through here and stretch it out. You can see just how soft and malleable it is. It works really well. And if you were with us earlier, you would have probably never imagined it would be this soft based on how stiff it was earlier. But that's the trick. Like, you're going to feel like you're kneading forever and it's not worth it. But they say for a good pasta, you've got to knead that dough for like 10 minutes to make sure that you are going to have this velvety soft noodles. So it is worth it.
I want to point out it's 7:30.
Yeah. You can point out 7:30 all you want. I never make my cooking deadlines. This is probably why I could never be a chef at a restaurant anywhere, because these people would be waiting on their food forever. It would be delicious, but they would never get their food on time unless I was sitting there and telling people what to do. It's when my mind, I have this idea on how long each step is going to take, but then I don't ever really multiply how many people I'm actually making this for. And it always takes a lot longer.
You have 2 questions. What flour did you use for your pasta dough, and where can they find the recipe?
So for my pasta dough, I just use good old all-purpose flour. You don't have to use a bougie flour. I feel like so many people think I need to have the semolina or the double O. You don't. It can make a nicer one, but you're still going to get a fabulous pasta with all-purpose flour. And so I use that. And then we made this dough up during our lunchtime live stream, and we have that video posted. So you can always go there to recreate our recipes for this on there. I might actually make my pasta one a recipe card for my members this month, along with the coconut cake, because I think those are 2 really big hits and they are delicious. So I might make those. But for everybody else, we do upload all of our lives, so you can definitely rewatch. Let's get our little meat filling here. And again, our meat filling is a mixture of Italian sausage, ground beef, ricotta, mozzarella, and Parmesan cheese with garlic salt, Italian seasoning. So it's like a 3 cheese and 2 meat filling, which is delicious. And the meat is already pre-cooked. So we cooked them up, and then we pureed them in our food processor to get the kind of the paste base for it. But it has just great flavor to it. I'll put our little dollop. It's about a tablespoon or so in here. So when we go to boil these off, you're essentially just waiting for the noodles to cook through, and then the cheeses to heat up. There we go. And then let's brush again the top here. Little brushy brush. Right on the top. And then we're going to make our slice down. And just try to make sure you leave a little space on each side of your little globs of meat. That way you have enough to seal around it. I've made the mistake of overfilling before, but as long as you have that, you should be able to just pinch up around. And that egg, especially when you go to boil it, will just hold all of this together. So, may not be the most visually beautiful ravioli, but they are going to taste fantastic. Another reason why I couldn't be in a restaurant. because I just care about taste. You know, there's people who, you know, they'll spend all their time in the presentation, but then I'm like, but does it taste good? That's all I care about. Because I think the whole presentation, while it's like it's an art form, and I think if I was making food on a much smaller scale than feeding 9, I probably might put a little bit more into it. But at this point, I'm like, gotta get food out before all the kids come, you know, screaming at me, we haven't eaten in ages. And I'm like, I just fed you guys. There's no food in the house. That's the best thing I get. Or my daughter, she loves to tell me that we have an ingredient household on there. And I'm like, there's plenty of food to eat. She's like, if you make it. Okay, let's get these guys. So I think we have enough for one batch to go into our water now. So we'll get that going, and then we can fold that into our sauce, and then we'll whip up our salad dressing on there so you guys can at least see what our main meal is. Okay, now these cook up fairly quickly in here, especially when you roll them down. You do want to make sure that you have them nice and coated with flour before you, you know, when you store them, don't like store them on top of each other or they'll stick. Make sure your water is boiling nice and high, and then we're just going to drop these in there. And they need like 3 to 5 minutes to cook up on there. You'll know when they're all boiling up at the top and crowding each other. Don't overboil them or they will start to fall apart because the noodles will get soggy. Fresh pasta cooks really, really fast. So that's one thing that's nice is once you get to this stage, it goes pretty quickly.
2 questions. Can you do this with pre-made pasta dough, with like fresh or frozen?
You know, I've never really worked with pre-made pasta dough. I've always just made it myself, but I'm assuming that you could do it with it, but I don't know for certain.
And can you show the cake again?
Yes. Let's get our mountain. This is a 5-layer coconut cake with coconut frosting, and then sweetened shredded coconut. And then, of course, we have the raffaellos and the mounds on the bottom. So this is your coconut lover's dream, and it will be delicious. And the cake is very reminiscent. Think of it has similar flavors to a pound cake with, you know, sweet tones of coconut to it, but fluffier, not quite as dense, but that same kind of flavor taste to it. I'm going to turn on my sauce here, and you can see we have our meatballs, our homemade meatballs in there, and we can get those kind of working. Let's get our salad whipped up. We'll make our dressing real quick while our pasta is boiling here.
Do you ever make cheesecake?
You know what? I've made cheesecake before, but I do not like cheesecake, so I rarely ever make it. And so the only time I feel like we have cheesecake is when we go to the Cheesecake Factory because I am just not a fan of it. And like I say, if I don't like it, I don't make it, which my kids are not happy about because they really love creme brulee, and I do not like creme brulee. So I don't make it. And they're like, you need it. And I'm like, well, you know what? When you go visit your uncle, he makes it. You just have to ask him for it. Okay, let's get our salad going. We're going to just use 2 bags of romaine lettuce for this. You want a nice crispy lettuce, so you could do romaine or you could do iceberg in here. Evie will be very happy. She has been craving a salad. And so I was like, we will deliver a salad for you today. Let's get all of our little ingredients over here. It's a very simple salad once you have kind of things popped together. I'm going to rinse my tomatoes real quick. We've got cherry tomatoes that we'll put over the top. I'm going to give my little things a little dunk down because I want them all to take their time under the water. They're fighting for the top now. We're getting close to being done. But there we go. Just be gentle with them. You don't want to over stir them or they'll get a little too, you know, crispy. gorgonzola cheese. If you don't like gorgonzola, you can always do like a feta cheese for this, which has a different flavor, but a lot of people will like feta over gorgonzola. Gorgonzola tastes very similar to blue cheese. I will say Evie will go and she'll be like, oh yes, I love this. She does not like this cheese. She'll be very excited and then she'll try it and she'll be like, oh, this is not the cheese I like on here. And then I'm going to have to sadly remove the bacon bits from, oh my gosh, how many did you eat? We'll put our bacon bits on here.
You have a question? What kind of cheese was that?
Gorgonzola. So it is similar to a blue cheese on there. I actually don't feel like there's actually a ridiculous amount of bacon bits, but I think that will make everybody very happy. So we've got there, and then I just need to cut up some red onions, and then we'll make our dressing for this on there. But I think our first round is almost ready for our pasta to go into our sauce. So let me just check this. I like to just kind of feel a noodle. You know what? These are feeling pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually, since I'm going to be reusing this water, I'm just going to take them out with my spatula here, drip off any extra, and then we'll throw them into our sauce here. Now you can always put them on a plate and then just put your sauce over them. But since, again, I've got to be making several more batches of these for everyone, this is kind of just a way to keep them and then just kind of gently splash them over with the sauce. It helps them prevent them from sticking to each other. Let's get all of these guys in here. And I find if you try to use tongs to take them out, you can tear them because, again, the pasta is more delicate. I did it on a 5. If you do it on a 4, again, there it's a bit more sturdier, but then it's thicker for the setting. We already got a lot in here. Probably, how many do I have in here already? It's a good amount.
Was it 21?
Something like that. And, yeah, and I still have like 4 or 5 more rounds. We're probably
28 maybe?
I actually think we only, something like that. Let's see. So we've got our first round going in here. Make sure you just cover them up with the sauce. And I have my sauce going on nice and low. This will, again, infuse that nice flavor into it.
You have a question? Do you have a favorite go-to kitchen appliance?
Appliance-wise, gosh, I will say utensil, yes. I love my tongs on everything. But appliance, I like my handheld mixer and I love my my stand mixer, but I feel like they have very different uses. If I'm going to be doing cookies and a lot of heavy duty mixing this, but then I do like my handheld for smaller batches on it. I feel like that's such a tricky thing because certain things use different, methods for cooking on there. And I feel like, it just depends what you're making. Now, I know I have to say, I don't know, because I like to cook a whole bunch of different things. So there isn't any one that I think. Now I try to avoid like the gimmicky things that are like for one use stuff, like a rice cooker or something that is just a one use thing. Because I find that I never use them, like I have a mandolin, which will give you perfectly sliced veggies in several different ways, but the effort it takes to take it all out and put it up, it's too much work and I can cut them just as fast. Okay, we've got our red onions. We'll sprinkle this over our salad as well. Beautiful. Perfect. Now, I'll set this over here. Let's whip up our salad dressing real quick. We have just a few minutes left, 2 seconds left on our focaccia, so let's go grab that out. Then we can whip up our salad dressing, and that way you guys can see what our meal is going to be. Beautiful. We've got our nice crispy focaccia. We want it to be like a nice little breadstick type base here. I spread it out very thin because my kids all say they like the thinner, crispier ones, but a lot of times I'll do it on a half sheet and it's a lot thicker. But we're gonna let this sit and cool, but as you see, it has just this nice kind of crispy crust to it. There's about a 1/4 cup of olive oil in the dough, and then you have it all around, so it's going to be like a really crispy base to it. Okay, let's get our salad dressing whipped up together. I'm gonna do a little drizzle right over here. And we're gonna get this going. I bring all of my little ingredients over. And we're essentially kind of making our Maggiano salad dressing. It's kind of, but we're gonna do it a little bit creamier and a little bit with, instead of red wine vinegar and white wine vinegar, we're gonna use balsamic. So let's start off with our olive oil. We're gonna do, let's see what I get here because I need to get enough for everyone. I've got perfect about 4 ounces, a little shy. It's about a 1/2 cup of olive oil. And we're gonna do equal parts olive oil to mayonnaise. So that's gonna be kind of our fat base to it. The mayonnaise is gonna give you a nice creaminess to it, which I think takes away the tanginess or the like runniness of it. Just makes it nicer. One more little scoop there. Perfect. And then we're gonna add in about a tablespoon of mustard. I'm gonna turn this down. Let's give it a good shake. There we go. And you want to use a Dijon mustard. You don't want like a yellow mustard on there. We're going to do about a 1/4 of a cup of balsamic vinaigrette. And then we're going to do some fresh lemon juice. Let me squeeze or cut my lemon over here. I've got it all the way out of here because I need my space for it. I'm going to get my lemon seed out. We're going to add in our fresh lemon juice. So that balsamic with the fresh lemon juice, I feel like really cuts through some of that. It just makes it a little bit nicer.
You have a question? Could you do a honey mustard?
You know, you could. I think it could work well with it if you were going to lean in on a sweeter side of it. And so you could, but you would have a sweeter vinaigrette versus a more salty savory. We're going to put in some oregano, about a teaspoon of dried oregano. We're going to do about a teaspoon of onion powder. This is going to give it a really nice savory flavor without the texture of minced up onions. About a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. Tickle in my throat. And then we need our garlic salt. And we're going to put about 2 teaspoons of garlic salt in here because the mayo is going to add a bit of saltiness as well. We'll shake this up and then we'll have our vinaigrette for our salad. Here we go. And it will be like a creamy Italian. It has that tanginess from the balsamic as well as the lemon juice, but it's just a nice richness from the mustard. And we'll have this with our salad. So guys, we've got our base here for our meal on here. Let me just grab this out so I can switch off our focaccia, which will be nice and crispy. Beautiful. Look at our base for it. Nice and thin because I wanted it extra thin today for my kids because they love the thinner, crispier focaccia versus the bigger, fluffier one where I add a little bit of yeast to give it a little boost on it. And then we have our ravioli here and our salad. So this is kind of our dinner here for it. We'll plate up later when we have everyone here for it, but I've got a couple more rounds to do. But we are kind of done with our base. I'm going to bring my cake over here one more time and we'll go through everything one last time. But today we finished up our coconut cake. We made this during our earlier stream. Again, it's a coconut cake with a coconut frosting and dusted with shredded coconut. Coconut, so good. We've got our copycat Maggiano salad with bacon, tomatoes, gorgonzola cheese, red onions, and then a homemade kind of creamy Italian vinaigrette. Our thin and crispy focaccia with rosemary and garlic salt on it. So it'll be great little crispiness to dump into our pasta sauce. And then we have our homemade ravioli. Let's see if I can pull one up here with our ground beef, Italian sausage, ricotta, mozzarella, and Parmesan cheese filling. So 3 cheese, 2 meat filling, and our homemade pasta dough that's made with 4 egg yolks and 4 whole eggs. So there's 8 eggs in there. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So our ravioli and our cake and salad, and you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets, so you can check out there. I've got my stand mixer as well as my pasta attachments, my all-clad pans, head clipping, but I have it all in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.